Lovely people. Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani has made a sensational disclosure. Something that I have always said from this channel, that genocidal Joe Biden and his Secretary of State, barbaric and butcher of babies, Antony Blinken, never wanted the genocide of Palestinians to stop. They enjoyed the moment every single second as much as their fellow war criminals in Israel did. And that's the reason why I said that these two war criminals had nothing to do with the latest ceasefire. Had it not been for Donald Trump and his tough-talking Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, this deal wouldn't have been possible. So what has the Qatari Prime Minister said? The Qatari Prime Minister just told Sky News that the framework of the ceasefire deal signed this week is exactly the same that Qatar and Egypt and other Arab countries had presented in December 2023. Yes, way back in December 2023. So genocidal Joe and butcher of babies Blinken have once again been lying that the current framework is what Biden had proposed on May the 31st, 2024. Listen to the Qatari Prime Minister.
This is the framework that we have signed 2 days ago. Is the same framework that we agreed on in December 23, which is basically 13 months of a waste of negotiating details that has no meaning and doesn't worth any single life that we lost in Gaza, or any single life of those hostages that lost their life because of the bombing, because they are among everyone else.
Let me cast your mind back to early December 2023, which according to the Qatari Prime Minister was when the deal was first presented. This was a period within weeks of the Israeli genocidal campaign. By 8th of December to be precise, Israeli warplanes and US supplied bombs had murdered more than 17,000 Palestinian men, women, children and babies. A ceasefire resolution was put to vote by United Arab Emirates in the Security Council. And as expected, the resolution was vetoed by none other than the US. Listen to this US representative justifying shamelessly his country's decision to allow the killing of more Palestinians.
This council's failure to condemn Hamas's October 7 terrorist attacks, including its acts of sexual violence and other unthinkable evils, is a serious moral failure. And it underscores the fundamental disconnect between the discussions that we have been having in this chamber and the realities on the ground. An undeniable part of that reality is that if Israel unilaterally laid down its weapons today, as some member states have called for, Hamas would continue to hold hostages, women and children, elderly men, many of whom, according to survivor accounts, are being subjected to cruel and inhumane treatment. And as of today, Hamas continues to pose a threat to Israel and remain in charge of Gaza. That is not a threat that any one of our governments would allow to continue to remain on our own borders. Not after the worst attack on our people in several decades. For that reason, while the United States strongly supports a durable peace in which both Israelis and Palestinians can live in peace and security, we do not support calls for an immediate ceasefire.
This was on 8th of December 2023. And this is not all. A question was posed to war criminal and Zionist spokesperson of the US State Department, Matthew Miller, on 11th of December. How did he respond? He shamelessly defended his administration's decision to reject ceasefire, even if it meant being isolated globally.
After the events of Friday, particularly the veto at the Security Council, the Secretary's meeting with the Arab and Islamic foreign ministers, and then the emergency determination on the tank munitions to Israel. I'm just wondering, Are you guys aware of how isolated you are?
So I would answer that by saying every time we engage with one of our partners in the region and our partners around the world, what the Secretary hears is the indispensability of American leadership, both in helping to resolve this conflict and bring an end to it that guarantees the destruction of Hamas, and in planning for the days and weeks and months and years to come. Now, that doesn't mean that we have agreements with everyone in the region about the best way forward. Obviously, we don't. There are a number of countries that have called for a ceasefire. We've made clear that while we support humanitarian pauses, we think a ceasefire that would allow the leadership of Hamas that plotted and planned October 7th to continue to carry on in Gaza and plan future attacks is one that's unacceptable related to this conflict.
Well, but what happened on Friday and Saturday and over the weekend, you have one country that stands.
So I think if you've looked at the results of our diplomacy over the past few months, you cannot take any one piece of data, be it a UN Security Council vote or anything else, and say that that represents the sum and total of our diplomacy, because it doesn't. There are other things that we've done in working with the G7, with partners in the region, that we'll continue to work on.
So the bottom line is you're not concerned that that it appears the rest of the world, with the exception of Israel,
I would say
is angry at you and is not, is unhappy with the position that the administration has taken, and that is American leadership.
I would say that
Correct.
This conflict has posed a number of obstacles for Israel, for countries in the region, for the United States, for the entire global community.
The Qatari Prime Minister also confirms that what helped them seal the deal now is the tough talking by Steve Witkoff, who was authorized by Donald Trump to use everything in his capacity to strike this deal. You can watch my video on this here. So this conclusively confirms the role played by Trump in achieving the ceasefire deal in Gaza. When I told you first last week, some of you had appeared skeptical. Now listen to the Qatari Prime Minister.
We believe President Trump can create a greater impact for the region, and Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the Middle East, has demonstrated a leadership in these negotiations, and we see the way he fought for a deal to happen. And I believe if this will continue to be the attitude and the approach for the next 4 years, we can create a lot of good things for the region.
I want you to think about the role played by Blinken and Biden in committing these unspeakable atrocities against Palestinians in the last 15 months. Had they agreed to this ceasefire formula in December 2023, hundreds of thousands of innocent lives could have been saved. These two war criminals literally have the blood of tens of thousands of children and babies on their hand. Children and babies who would have been alive today. Think of Hind Rajab, the 6-year-old angel who Israeli terrorists fired more than 350 bullets to murder her. She would have been alive today, along with her family members. Children and babies who were burnt alive by Israeli barbarians and savages, they would have been alive today. Gaza's health infrastructure, schools, places of worship, universities, and other places of educational learning, they would have been intact. The destruction and carnage that Israeli terrorists caused in Rafah last summer, Palestinians may have been spared from these brutalities. So it's clear that Biden and Blinken consciously supported Israel's genocidal campaign and blocked every single effort to bring these war crimes to an end. The world may forget, but I, with your support, will continue to remind the world about their bloody legacy. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.